Hi, Art One printmakers. I am here on video, which is making me think a lot about how we had to do things last year, and I'm so glad I don't have to do these videos that often. But I wanted to make a video for everyone on how to doctor up your etching, because as you know, you'll either be doing this on your own or I'll be helping the people that are printing. And so I'm not going to be able to give you the kind of time and attention on this part of the plan, but it's something you can completely do just based off of this demonstration video. So I'm going to use Campbell Counter's beautiful etching, which doesn't need much doctoring up. And I hope this is going to be okay, Campbell, for me to do this. And to add a little bit of color and touch up a couple of lines so that you don't have to go through the inking process again. That's the idea for everyone here. So let me switch my screen. You can see that the first thing you're going to want to do is, well, actually the first thing you're going to want to do is sit in the appropriate place in the room. So I'm at one of the tables that says adding color. The front table will be for adding color. And so I've sat in the appropriate spot. There's a paint palette out. My print was here waiting for me. And so I'm going to get started. You also are going to actually want your computer screen up because you're going to want to have your image if you do plan to add color. So I'm going to kind of have that off to the side on my screen and switch my video so you guys can still see what I'm working on. So let me switch back. Okay, so you really want to be able to see my setup. And so the things that I will have out for you are the paint palette and an ebony pencil. And then you're going to need to get the brushes, the water cup from the sink. Okay, but you're capable of doing that. So the first thing I would do, I'm right-handed, so if you're painting, you always want to set your palette up towards the right if you're right-handed, so you're not dripping things all the way across your whole surface that you're working on. So I'm going to start with the pencil because some people might not need the palette. I'm going to get it out for everybody, but you might not actually end up using it, so just ignore it and leave it there at the end of class. So what you'll do for doctoring up an etching is to simply go back in. If it's just a couple of lines you need to make and reinforce, you're just going to use your ebony pencil to create those lines in that area of fill. It's not going to be as black as the etching ink was. If you want to also utilize a micron pen, you can. I just find sometimes people get a little bit too crazy with the micron pen and do a little bit too much detailing, and so I'm hesitant to demonstrate that because I really don't think you need to go as far as to use a micron pen. So I'm just defining some areas, the middle tones in Campbell's that she might have wanted to get, and just sharpening up. Sometimes the etching is really sharp and crisp, and other times it didn't quite get there. So I'm just sort of filling in and adding a little bit more detail where I think it's necessary. And you can also look at the picture too. And so, yeah, this is looking good. So now to move on to the paint. Again, it's on the right side of my setup because I'm right-handed. I'm going to mostly be working with oranges. I've gotten both a round and flat-ended paintbrush, and I would recommend you do the same. And so I noticed from the image that Campbell emailed me that this area was all orange, and so I'm using quite a bit of water to activate the paints. They're just like a traditional watercolor paint that you've used like your whole life, but they are a bit more opaque, so you're going to want to make sure for this process that you apply a lot of water because you don't want it to be so opaque over your lines. But you can see, and I'll show you a little bit more closely here in a minute, that it looks like the paint was actually applied before the ink. That's a really nice thing about this process, is because that ink is so dark, I've painted on over it, but it actually looks like it's under the ink. And that's because I'm using a pretty good amount of water, but also because the ink and really Campbell's etching lines were done so well. And so now I'm just going to go in, and it is a bit darker down here. So I really want this bright orange, but I need to subdue it a little bit with water so that it doesn't overpower her etching lines. And she could let this dry and take a little break in the middle of class, or by the time she works all the way over to here, this part that I'm working on now will be dry. And then at that point would be a good time to go in and reinforce the darkest black with that micron pen. So I will go ahead and get those out. I just don't want you to do that right away because I want to keep the etching as a true etching as much as possible. But you can see already where this is really starting to show what the theme was that is in her picture. And she's done all the values, so I'm really just going to primarily be working with a couple of shades of orange, and that's it. And so that's what I'd like for you to do on the second printing day. So most other people will be printing, and you'll be doctoring the print up, or some of you might be accessing this video on an open studio day or even at home, and you can do all of this within an hour wherever you are. Thanks.